Good day. My name's Enrique Alvarez, and I am here with my fearless co-host Christy Porter for another exciting episode of Logistics with Purpose. We have two amazing guests. How have you been today, Christy?
I have been good. It's already been a very productive day at Vector, so I feel like this is the next step in not only being a productive day, but also getting to talk with people that we deeply admire and have known of their work for a long time, have worked with them. And so I feel like we get to talk to so many amazing guests, but it's also even more fun when when we're already familiar with the people, when we already know them, know of their work, have been big fans of them for a long time. So I'm extra excited about today's conversation, especially because I actually visited their office a couple of years ago in Utah. So I'm excited to have this conversation.
Definitely huge fans of both of you, and I guess it's also important for us, Christy, and for everyone that's listening to the podcast to get their weekly dose of good news in supply chain, right? The only positive focused podcast for supply chain. So without further ado, Christy, please do us the honor.
Yes, I would love to introduce Hayley Smith, who is the founder and director of Lifting Hands International, as well as Ihor Tereshchenko, who is the Ukraine director. So we had the privilege of hearing from Ihor a couple of months ago in our Leveraging Logistics for Ukraine call. We've known of Hayley for a long time. We've spoken with Tracy and Jessica and many people on their team, so this is our first chance to really hear everything from Hayley as the founder, and then Ihor will of course tell us what's happening in Ukraine, and Hayley will be able to shed light on what's going on around the world, because we love talking about Ukraine anytime we can, but also want to note that Lifting Hands International does incredible work around the globe for displaced people. So I am delighted to have this conversation with them and hear probably even more than I even knew about them. So before we get into it, I'm going to ask you both a couple of just quick questions to set the stage and get the ball rolling. So Hayley, first up, what is one of your favorite hobbies?
Well, one of my favorite hobbies is I love history, and I go down these massive rabbit holes. Right now, I'm going down a very big rabbit hole of the Chernobyl nuclear disaster, and yeah, I think it's because I've been close to the exclusion zone before.
Oh.
I visited Belarus about 5 years ago before COVID, and I had a chance to go and do my own tour on my, and I decided against it because I probably would have gotten in big trouble and maybe some, yeah. Anyway, I think I just love history. So that's my latest one. World War I was a big rabbit hole for a long time, and I would go to all the battlefields and museums, and so I'm a huge nerd.
I love it. I
try to mask as like this cool person, but in the end, I'm a huge nerd.
So have you seen the Chernobyl miniseries on HBO?
Oh, I sure have.
It's amazing. I mean, you know what's going to happen, but you're on the edge of your seat the entire time. It was fantastic. I love that series.
Yeah, Ihor's been there. He's been to Pripyat, which I'm insanely jealous of. So
Fascinating. Okay.
That's one thing I hold against him, but everything else I love about him, but I'm very jealous of that.
That's awesome. And you have been all over the world, both for travel, for work, for everything. So where is one or two favorite places for you to be?
Jordan, hands down, Jordan's one of my favorite countries. I speak Arabic. I've been to many Arab countries, and I would say Jordan is I vibe with Jordan. It's just it's a wonderful place. There's a lot of hospitality. There's a little bit of chaos that I love. Like I love just a tiny bit of the traffic and the noise. It's very different from Norway, which is very orderly and very quiet. Sure. I love just making friends immediately. And there's just enough like respect of private space that I have, that other countries in the world that maybe there's a lack of. And so Jordan is just, it's a perfect combination for me. And the history, the culture, the food, the hospitality, the Insta friends. I love it. Also Norway's great. I live in Norway, so it's beautiful nature. The summers are gorgeous. And so, yeah.
Oh, fantastic. I'm sold on both places now. I need to get there. Ihor, what is, I know, of course, you're living in a war zone, so you may not get to this much, but a recent book, TV show, something that you've watched that has made an impact on you or read?
Um, I well, okay, but maybe it wouldn't be the best book, to recommend to other people. But I read Bloody Meridian by Cormac McCarthy, and it actually really impressed me. But it's a really hard book to read and a really
Sure.
tragic story. So uh, had a really huge impact on me. But I'm a big fan of his, so I try to read one of his books from time to time.
Oh, I love that. Thank you. We're always taking recommendations here. And then, what is a quote that inspires you or helps get you through the day?
Oh my God, that's kind of tough question.
So many good ones.
Keep on keeping on, I guess.
Yes.
Just our philosophy.
Keep on keeping on.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And well, of course, Haley, before we move on, we also saw that you're a huge Seinfeld fan, so we couldn't get off the interview without talking to you about that. So, which character do you relate to most and why?
Oh my gosh.
We're all about the hard questions here.
Yeah, for sure.
It's a great series, by the way.
I, oh man, they're all kind of despicable people. Uh, I think I love George. I love George Costanza. I just
Independent
love,
Age.
Yeah,
I love just his voice, his acting. Uh, he's just a fantastic character.
he is. I know.
It's
This
an
year I
incredible
keep saying
show.
it's the summer of Christie. I keep using his. It's the summer of George. I love that
You're
one.
killing Independent George. That's the.
Yeah.
He's just such a despicable loser,
Yes.
but his lines are so good. So yeah,
So good. I love it.
yeah.
Ihor, have you ever watched Seinfeld?
No, unfortunately, no. No.
Okay.
Put that on your list.
We'll have to introduce you to Seinfeld. But
Well,
no.
if you're talking about miserable people, I'm a big fan of It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, so
Ah,
I have my own show.
Good show. That is a good show too.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah, yeah.
that's the Danny DeVito, right?
yeah.
Yeah, that's well.
Good show. Well, thank you again for your answers. Thanks for sharing a little bit of yourselves with us and our audience. Now let's look a little more into your childhood. We would like to know a little bit more about who you were, and if you can tell us a little bit more of your childhood. Where did you grow up? Anything that you can remember? And I'll start with you, Haley, if you don't mind.
Yeah, I grew up in El Paso, Texas. So
Oh,
my parents met at the University of Utah. They're both from Salt Lake City. My dad was a JAG officer in the Army. Ended up at Fort Bliss, where he retired from the Army and started his own law practice there. I'm the youngest of five siblings, and so they traveled the world, and then I was born in El Paso. Raised there, I would say that El Paso absolutely formed who I am. I absolutely adored the diversity of culture. I think that Fort Bliss brought a lot of culture, and then I love the Hispanic culture. I love how everyone's very friendly. You hug people when you say hi. There's no awkward handshakes. It's just straight for the hug. I also grew up constantly, if you go on I-10, around the kind of the mountain to the other side of El Paso, you have to kind of go around the mountain. You're right on the border of Mexico, right? The Ciudad Juarez. And as a kid, I was just constantly exposed to, like, if you are driving on one side, you see relative wealth, you see the University of Texas at El Paso, you see the huge football stadium, you see really lovely historical homes in these preserved neighborhoods. And then you look to the other side and you see abject poverty, you see kind of a different kind of infrastructure. At night, if you go up to the mountain, you can definitely see a division. And so as a child, I think I was exposed very young to inequity, and also just why is this side of the border doing more okay economically than this side. We went all the time. We had friends at the mercado. We would always go to the same shops. And my dad, I don't speak very good Spanish, but my dad's very fluent. And so we had these wonderful friends we would go visit. So it was this, like, why everyone's the same, but for some reason this country just has a little bit less economically, or like the socioeconomic situation there is different, and it just didn't make sense to me, and it's never made sense to me. And so I think I maybe I don't know if this is okay to say, but I really do just I'm able to see that people are people, and a lot of the powers that be, and a lot of just the decisions that are made, global leadership just really hurts the day-to-day person, if that makes
Absolutely.
sense.
No,
It
does,
really,
and
yeah, it really did sear into my mind that we're just kind of lucky, and also that there are politicians who make terrible decisions. And there's some of the reason that America has so much wealth is because we exploit places like Mexico, and like NAFTA really hurt Mexico, and it's right. And so it's always going through my mind is why do people have more and less, and what can we do to kind of help alleviate that? Is it up to me? Is it up to us? Is it up to the politicians? And so it's always just my brain's always trying to filter this information, especially as I've been exposed to more and more of the world and seen some more of the disparity. I have to just really sit back, and instead of always concentrating on it and trying to figure out what's happening, is just how can I help alleviate some of the problems? How can I connect with the people one-on-one, so it's not us coming in and playing savior, and that there's just a lot of collaboration and seeing people face to face, hearing their stories and treating those stories with dignity, and yeah, just trying to do our best to help others in a way that's sustainable, in a way that doesn't make people feel like objects, or that they're just like these sad people. Yeah, humanizing people is a huge part of LHI.
Wow.
Because we're human.
I bet that
You
it
know?
was, no, I bet it was like very interesting for you growing up in El Paso, right? Because you see this imaginary line, and it's just very random. Why is it there? Why isn't it like a couple of feet this way or that way? And then, of course, you see the differences, and of course, that makes you think how arbitrary some of these decisions are, and maybe how silly some of the policies are as well, because you pointed it out, we're all equal. And Ihor, tell us a little bit more about you. Where did you grow up? Where were you born? And what can you share with us in those early ages of your childhood?
Sure. I was born in Kyiv, but my mom is actually from Lviv, where part of your team working now. So I spent all my holidays, like summer, winter holidays, in Western Ukraine. So I've been traveling all the time here and there. And when I was growing up, I see these really different cultures here in Kyiv. It was, well, to be honest, it was more Russian-speaking surroundings, and I've been growing up in Russian-speaking surroundings. But when I went to Lviv each year, I felt like maybe I was born and like was growing up in Kyiv, but my heart and my soul always were in Western Ukraine, because for me it was a place where they were really fighting and trying to preserve Ukrainian traditions, Ukrainian culture, and Ukrainian heritage. So although I'm from Kyiv, and like I'm considering myself a Kyivlanin, how we call it, but I also always felt a bit closer to Western Ukraine. But what actually I'm now reconsidering from my childhood years, and what I'm thinking a lot quite oftenly, is that, well, basically when I was growing up, I saw a lot of people live in Ukraine. We had a huge wave of economic immigration beginning from early 90s, when the Soviet Union collapsed, and there was a huge poverty here in Ukraine. So people were living. We all, like almost every family in Ukraine, now have someone living abroad, even before the full-scale invasion. And to be totally honest with you, before the full-scale invasion, I also wanted to leave Ukraine, looking for a better life, looking for better job opportunities, better future for my children. I have one son, but I'm hoping to have more. So, but the war actually changed everything. Now I don't want to leave Ukraine. A lot of people still do, and they're trying to flee Ukraine, but I don't want to, because I reconsidered what it means to stay and fight for your home, for your family, for your traditions, for your heritage. So it really changed my mind into trying to stay here and do my best just to help our country to survive and to be a prosperous country for Ukrainians.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you both. It's easy to see, just hearing these little snippets of your lives, what led you to these next steps and how we ended up here today, and your passion for your country, your global communities, helping others, and making sure that there is more equity, there is more help, there are plenty of resources, and helping find ways to redistribute those. So before we get back into Ukraine, Hayley, founder of Lifting Hands International, you could have done a lot of things. What led you to this point? And then tell us about the mission.
Yeah, I'll do this the long story short. So the beginning is actually when I was at BYU a long time ago. I was really struggling. BYU is a pressure cooker, especially if you're not like a cookie cutter type of LDS person. And I definitely was not, and definitely am not anymore. But like, I really needed to latch on to something to get me through some dark times. I went to the public library. I picked out a book because I was like, I gotta concentrate on something. I gotta do something to get myself in a better place. So I went to the language section and I pulled out a book and I said, I'm gonna sit down and I'm gonna learn a foreign alphabet. And I just picked out a book and it was the Arabic alphabet. I sat down and I started learning it and I absolutely fell in love. This was my last year at college and I already had plenty of credits. I really probably should have graduated, but I extended a year so that I could take Arabic, and I fell in love, and it put me on this trajectory that pulled me out of this dark place and propelled me towards seeing the world in a very different way, seeing the post 9/11 world in a different way, seeing a lot of the reasons behind conflict, seeing that it goes, a lot of it is traced back to World War One. Everyone says, oh, they've been fighting for millennia. It's like, actually, no, it's a lot of it is just recent history. I loved living in different countries, being instantly accepted into someone's family and welcomed into their home and fed and given all kinds of wonderful experiences. I lived in Egypt and Morocco. I've lived in Jordan. I visited Lebanon, Qatar, Israel, even though, whatever. I have mixed feelings about that. I was able to go to some like Arab conclaves of Jerusalem and everything like that. So it was really beautiful. And okay, so maybe the long story is becoming long. I became an Arabic teacher at Boston Public Schools. Qatar Foundation International had a grant at my school. I taught beautiful, wonderful students for a couple of years. I created my own curriculum. I spent the summer in Jordan making videos because teenagers need to see teenagers.
Right.
And so it really opened their minds to, oh, they're teenagers just like us. And these stereotypes were just, I destroyed these stereotypes in this classroom, and even had an opportunity to take 5 of our brightest students to Qatar for a cultural exchange. Anyway, long story short, I was getting homesick. I ended up quitting that job and moving to Arizona to be closer to family. And within 6 months, I was sitting a desk job and feeling like I'd made the hugest mistake of my life. But this desk job let me have more time to learn more Arabic, study Arabic, to watch the news. And at this time, right, this is 2015, and I was watching closely the Syrian refugee crisis and the exodus of people from Syria to Turkey to Greece, and just the logistical disaster that was. And so I felt really compelled to go to one particular camp that's a registration camp that became a refugee camp. And I had these ideas of what humanitarian work is. I thought I knew what refugee work is. I grew up in the 90s and watched the Yugoslav wars just happening in front of my eyes. I saw the UN logo emblazoned on all the cars and the tents. And so I thought when I went to Greece, I would see kind of the same thing. When I got there, it was just pure chaos. And no one knew anything. And the only phrase I could say to people in Arabic was mish arfa, which is like, I don't know. Like, where do I sleep tonight? Mish arfa. Where do I get food? Mish arfa. How do I register? Like, where do I sleep for 2 days because the line is so long? Mish arfa. And it really did kind of kill a part of my soul, because it's people that I love and it's a language that I understand, and people were telling me their stories from person to person, and I just was in a little bit of shock. The one day that really, speaking of logistics and distributing aid around the world, the one day that really made the impact and made me want to start LHI is we got news on the walkie-talkie like, hey, we're bringing in some people that had just capsized. This is December in the Aegean Sea. It's freezing. We're going to bring them. They're going to line up outside of this tent. We're going to stick you in this tent, and there's boxes of aid, and we need you to go through it and clothe people. And so the first image, and I still remember this so well, is this older man. He's the first in line, and his chin was quivering violently because it was so cold. Wow. And he was saying, please help me, please help me. There are children, women, older women in this long line. Eventually, it was just so cold that they put them in a women's tent and a man's tent and told them to strip down because they were just going to freeze. And one volunteer and I went into this tent and we're desperately trying to find winter clothing, underwear, even thermal socks, anything to clothe people. And it was just junk. It was like, well-meaning people that were going through their closets and just getting rid of whatever. There were high heels. I mean, there was like lingerie where I picked up, okay, no. So I ended up giving away my jacket. I left the camp that day in my t-shirt and leggings because what am I supposed to do? And there was this one moment that I was in the women's tent and people were crying. I was crying because I just felt so helpless. And I was announcing like, I'm so sorry. We have to wait for people to deliver more aid. And one lady lit up a cigarette and she's like, oh, it's okay. I've seen death. This is nothing, Habibti. It's okay. Just relax. And so, yeah, people started being like, it's okay. We'll figure it out. You did your best. And so I left that day feeling quite shocked, feeling like either I can go back home and be at this desk job and I can keep reading the news and watching the news and I can keep working this little job, or I can do something with what I saw. And so I started LHI. I filled out the paperwork. The phrase "lifting hands international" popped in my head. I have no idea where it came from, but I was like, well, the org needs a name, so filled it out, filed the paperwork, got 501c3. My goal was to fill a shipment of labeled boxes of things that are actually needed. Right. And I know that sounds like the most simple business plan for a nonprofit, but you would be so surprised at the lack of organizational or an organized response, especially when it comes to material aid. And to this day, our shipments are the most requested in several countries because the partner orgs that are the receiving orgs will open the truck and everything's just labeled. And they know what there is. They don't have to dig through these boxes looking for stuff and half of the shipment they have to throw away. It's not like that. So that's where the LHI came from. I guess that was the long story long, but
it was a good story.
Yeah.
It was a good story.
And thanks for sharing that with us. We'll definitely deeper into lifting hands and how it has evolved from the very, very early beginnings of you filing that paperwork. I thought you were going to have a slightly more interesting story about the name, by the way, which is an amazing name.
I never knew where it came from.
Popped to your.
It was right.
It's a great name. Yes.
And LHI, it just rolls off the tongue.
Yes.
It's a great name. Well, Ihor, shifting to you briefly, tell us a little bit more about your education and things that actually you did early on. What did you study and how did you get actually into this organization and how did you met Hayley and how did all that happen?
Sure. So my first degree was in economics, and I ended it, I believe, in 2013 or something like that. And I joined Federation of Trade Unions of Ukraine. I was advocating for labor rights. I was taking part in collective bargaining between employees representatives, employers representatives, and Ukrainian government. But then I decided to switch and to try something bigger, something more complex, because I don't know, I just was always attracted to challenges, I guess. I'm really always trying to challenge myself a little bit more to motivate me. So anyway, I switched to public service, joined Ministry of Social Policy, then Ministry of Economy. I've been working in a directorate for employment in Ukraine. It was, although it was a structure inside Ukrainian government, it was actually built and sponsored by European Commission, because it was a separate division that was responsible for harmonization of Ukrainian legislation with European legislation within agreement of association between EU and Ukraine. So it was a big part of Ukrainian process of joining European Union. And I've been working there until the war started. And actually, what was funny, and I believe I guess I can tell about it now. I don't have anyone around here. So, in the first 2 days of war, our HR service in ministry just tried to find people, because people were all over Ukraine. Some people were trying to get their relatives to the border, as I did in the first day. Some people just, left Kyiv and was hiding in their summer houses, in villages where they have relatives, etc., without no connection. So it was a pure chaos. So they brought everyone they could find. I got back to Kyiv. My family left Ukraine. I got them to border, and they left. So I got back to Kyiv, and I was assigned to lead a relocation program for Ukrainian businesses. And for the next half of year, although my profile and my main responsibilities were labor market and employment service, employment programs, etc. But again, we had to deal with what we got. So I was leading this relocation program, and we were trying to help small and medium businesses to relocate from eastern and southern Ukraine, where they were just losing their means of production under bombing, and to get them somewhere safer, to western Ukraine, to northern Ukraine, etc. So I've been doing this for around half a year, but then when the war was developing and we had more and more, I was witnessing more and more atrocities here in Ukraine, I decided that I want to be just, closer to people and doing something, some good to them, that I can actually be sure that I'm doing something good for them. Because when you're working with ministry, you're way too far from people. However you try, you're way too far from your neighbors, your family, and your just people around. So I joined Society of Red Cross of Ukraine, and I worked there for around half a year. But I don't know, I decided to look for something else where, again, because it's a big organization, a huge organization, and it involves a lot of bureaucracy, and I was looking for something more, something more flexible, something more applicable, something more practical, I guess. So yeah, I just saw a announcement that some organization with a bit a bit strange name looking for a partnership manager, and yeah, here I am 2 years later with Lifting Hands International.
What was, and you skipped very quickly through one of the things that might be interesting for the interview, and to me in particular. So you both come from a very similar background. You both want to help people. You both went and saw something that you didn't like, and instead of just going back to your desk jobs, you said, no, I'm going to do something about this, and you did, which is inspiring. And now you're both working together. Ihor, why Lifting Hands? What was the one thing that you thought, this is it, this is going to be my home for now?
I don't know, I think it was an interview when I met our COO, Chief of Operations, Jaron, and Serhiy, who was a country director at the time. I really liked them. They looked like really cool dudes, and when I watched our LHI's Instagram, and when colleagues described me what they were doing at the moment, I thought that they're doing really cool programs. They're helping people all over Ukraine. And what actually was a defining moment for me, to be honest, was that I saw on Instagram that LHI leadership come here to Ukraine. They're not afraid. They're not, sitting somewhere in Geneva or whatever. And they actually come here. They try to talk to people. They care about people. And this this approach, this really caring approach, is something that I can definitely say that what really motivates me to work with LHI. So yeah.
It's very, very authentic, and of course very brave to do what they do. And Hayley, going back to you, what was the story behind Ukraine? At what point did you think that it was going to be a good thing to expand? Because you've been helping a lot of different countries around the world before Ukraine. So what was kind of your story behind, well, this is not something I'm going to be waiting of, so, and you did something again.
Yeah, I think, yeah, we've really been able to hone and polish what we do, and that is responding quickly to emergency situations where there will be refugees and displaced people. And, the couple of weeks leading up to the invasion, everyone was holding their breath because of all the Russian forces that are building up in Belarus and Russia. And we have a couple of team members, one who speaks great Russian, and he's now learned Ukrainian. He lived in Moldova for a while and worked with an NGO there. So we knew that a lot of people would flee to Moldova. So initially I was on a plane to Iași, Romania, and then crossed into Moldova right after the full-scale invasion, where there were thousands of people fleeing. And we were going around Moldova trying to figure out how we can help. And so what we ended up doing is supporting dozens of small NGOs who overnight had to become humanitarian NGOs. I mean, we had people that were like little NGOs that were helping elderly people grow food. And all of a sudden they had to become these humanitarian refugee organizations. And so we provided a grant to each one. It can go a long way in Moldova. Within a couple of weeks, though, we... just the scale of the invasion, we knew that there was going to be a lot of need in Ukraine. Ukraine's a really massive country with a large population. Yeah. So while we really loved working in Moldova, we knew we could do a lot more within Ukraine as well. So using our connections, we found a number of existing organizations and or community groups within Ukraine, and we went in and we talked to them. We identified which groups that had really good, solid operations, and obviously know the lay of the land. They know the language, they know the locals, they know how to get in and help. And in order for them to keep going and not have to quit after a couple of months, which is usually the case for small organizations, that they get overwhelmed with the need, they get overwhelmed with the growing budgets. So we started this beautiful team, this network of teams where all over Ukraine, where we've established, this is what we do best, is going in and we figure out what people need in their context, which is why we have animals in some places and then we have community centers in some places. So within Ukraine, we established community centers in towns that have been destroyed, where the schools are gone, demolished, where a lot of people still live, because it's not easy to just leave. If you don't have a salary, if you're an older person, you live on a stipend and you live off the land, you can't just go to Poland and come up with $2,000 a month for rent. And so that's what we did. And we established community centers in Northeast Ukraine, one in Southeast Ukraine. We did some aid distributions in Odessa. We established a women's shelter. So people who are displaced from the East, who can't make it to Poland, who don't have $2,000 a month for rent, they can live free of charge, or they can stay for a day. We have people that have been there for years. We have 3 generations right now. There's a 89 or a 90-year-old woman who remembers World War II, and she and her daughter and granddaughter live at the shelter. The granddaughter goes to school, is this beautiful artist, and so it's just this beautiful community. And we also send aid to Ukraine. I think initially there was, when a large organizations go in and say, okay, we've done our job, we've distributed aid, a lot of times it's just they take it over the border and then leave it. They don't establish distribution routes, especially large orgs who don't have teams within the country. They don't have teams to get it to where it's actually needed, and they kind of just hope that locals will take care of it. And so we wanted to make sure our aid was getting to places, and so that's one reason we have Ihor and some other employees in Ukraine, is to make sure that stuff gets from the border to where it's needed. And that includes, Ihor goes to Donetsk, which is extremely risky and dangerous. He and our colleague Anastasia also go quite regularly to do some distributions to frontline communities. Looks like we lost Ihor, but
he
yeah.
did say at the beginning of the conference that they were expecting some blackouts.
Good, he's back. Yeah.
Sorry, guys, we just had a blackout.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say personally, I think, like Ihor said, my team members and I insist on going I think, yes, it's risky, and my hair started falling out after this latest trip. Literally, I went in June, and it was. I mean, there's always risk. Every trip I've gone, there's been something, but this last time was a lot of somethings, and that was very eye-opening, I think, for me. It's just getting a tiny, tiny taste of what Ihor and our other team members have to live through literally every night. The
Yeah.
And it's just so stressful. And that, but you know what? And people are like, why do you put yourself through that? I'm like, well, open your eyes. Like, I have the opportunity to do this. I'm a CEO of an org. I have to go and see our programs. How am I supposed to come back to places like Brooklyn and go to fundraisers and say, our org does this? I mean, I've never seen it, but yeah. And so, and also just talking to people, showing up for people. I know that if I were in their shoes, okay, some random American woman comes every 6 months, but I think it does make a huge difference, because especially at our women's shelter, where I see the same people over and over, or our community centers where I'm seeing youth grow up over the last 3 years. It's beautiful. It's so beautiful to have these relationships where you hug people and they're crying and I'm crying, because it's just, you love them so much. That is a fantastic part of my job, and it's definitely that way in Ukraine. It's a beautiful country with beautiful people, and I feel like the news doesn't cover really what's happening right now. A lot of people are like, oh, I thought the war was over. Like, where are you getting that information? It's escalated. Lviv got hit. Like, I think even historically, it's one of the worst attacks on Lviv ever.
Yeah.
Right? Lviv was somewhat spared in World War II, and then now it's just getting pummeled. It just doesn't make any sense. And you have hundreds and hundreds of drones every night. It's a war of attrition. They're trying to just bleed Ukraine dry of anti-missile artillery, and every Shahed drone that flies over, it requires thousands of dollars worth of air defense, and so it's just disgusting. And then just having been there and just being like, when you hear an explosion, it's just this weird realization of like, that is someone trying to kill.
Yeah.
That is like this clear, like, I want to kill you. And when you hear it and when you see it, it's like the most palpable, horrible feeling. And I try to turn it into motivation to get people to give money, because like, that's how we keep going, and kind of just build this community in the US of supporters who want to help in a palpable way. So
yeah. Thank you. Yeah. And so I think we obviously had a very real life example just now. We lost Ihor for a minute because he went into a blackout and is now joining us and trying to reset back up. So Ihor, I think, one of the things I am constantly asking our team in Ukraine, and I'd love for you to share with the audience too, is not only are you trying to keep yourself and your family safe, but you're trying to get work done, you're trying to provide aid to others. As Hayley mentioned, you're going to other regions, some of which are incredibly dangerous right now. So I guess paint a better picture for those of us who are sitting in very safe places right now. What does it look like to try and get work done on a daily basis when you've got so much to care and worry about?
Okay, so let me paint you a usual day in Ukraine. So I work from my home, so I got a small office here, and besides occasional blackouts, so sorry for lighting, yeah, it's a backup one. It looks like this. When we wake up, I usually, me or my wife, we get in our son to kindergarten, so I try to plan my meetings for early morning mostly, so I can get up, get him to kindergarten and start working immediately. But lately it wasn't happening, unfortunately, because when there's air alarm, when there's rockets flying, all the school and kindergarten facilities are closing, so you have to stay home. You stay to hide, actually. A lot of people are still going to like underground covers, metros, etc. But we do that occasionally, but not really often, because most of shelling happens at night. And if you can imagine, getting your child from bed at like 2-3 a.m. and getting them to some shelters that's 10 minutes from your place, in like especially in winter when it's cold, it's just huge emotional stress for children. So we mostly now have a hallway life and a sleeping place in a hallway. So we've got a special mattress that can be rolled. So you just roll it over in your hallway, you put some pillows there, and we're sleeping like that for most of nights in our hallways. But for a work day, it's actually even a bit more stressful sometimes because when you're trying to to work, you're focused on some task on your hands. It can be like a big strategic task, it can be some small technical issue, but you're focused on that, you're working, and then just immediately air alarms goes on. And when there's drones coming, it's a bit easier because they take time to reach Kiev. For example, it takes around 40 minutes, I guess, from Russia border for a drone to reach Ukraine. But when you have a ballistic missile or supersonic missile, it's totally different. You know that you have like maybe 40 seconds, 1 minute to do anything to save yourself, and you can't do actually anything in that time. So 1 minute is not enough to get from I live on the 7th floor, to get downstairs and get outside. So you just focus, you hope for the best, you try to not think about that because when you live in a war for more than 3 years now, almost 4 years actually, if you will keep thinking about this constantly, you'll just go mad. I was considering myself like a very mentally stable person, very mentally stable. I've never been too stressed about anything, but even now I feel that I'm reaching really severe state of anxiety, especially during shellings. Because it's not just me, it's my family, it's my child, and not being able to protect your family, it just just pushes the ground from your feet, and that's what you're going through almost every day for 3 years now. It's stressful, yes, it's hard, but as I said previously, just keeping on because when you don't have actually a lot of possibilities to stop this, and the whole world is trying to stop this, and unfortunately unsuccessful yet, you just need to adapt. So adaptability, I believe, is one of the strongest features of Ukrainians now, because we adapted to blackouts, we adapted to constant shellings, we adapted to sleepless nights, and actually that's a very severe form of torture, I must assure you, because when you're not sleeping for weeks straight, it's really messing with your head. So yeah, we're just adapting, we're trying to do our best. I believe like most of Ukrainians are trying to do our best, and just keeping positive, I guess, at whatever mean we can.
Wow. Well, that's very, very powerful, and a very bleak picture you're basically painted for everyone here and the audience, and we appreciate for you being so open and candid about this and sharing it with us. You did mention, Ihor, something that's very interesting, and I shift this to Hayley, because when most people think about humanitarian aid, they always think about, well, we'll send food and water and shelter and hygiene products, but then you mentioned something that's just probably as important, which is the mental health aspect of it, and you're living it. You have a young son as well, and of course that's very important that he grows up considering his mental health. And so, Hayley, how do you guys tackle this? Because I know you guys have done a really good job also on this psychological support side of things, especially in areas like Ukraine, as Ihor was mentioning, and maybe Gaza as well. Could you tell us a bit more about what your team faces and how do you support them psychologically?
Absolutely. That's a really good question. And first, I just want to say that I've met Ihor's wife and son, and I feel like they're doing an incredible job of helping him adapt. And he's an adorable child, and it's an honor to work with Ihor and see him and his wife. Anyway, so obviously, yes, like people think once, food, clothing, also in refugee camps, right? If people are out of danger, they're living away from the shellings and the bombs, then they're okay. I think we all know, especially after COVID, I think the research and our own experiences empirically prove that we need people, we need care, we need mental health support. We absolutely have to have community. So, and even from our own little tiny experiences, even my own little tiny experiences, hearing shelling and drones in Ukraine, the hypervigilance, the irritability from losing sleep, the hopelessness, the anxiety, right? And that's also the case in Gaza with the continuous shelling, and even post ceasefire, there's just so much unrest and so much fear that people are going to these dark places where they need psychological first aid. So our model is to work with local organizations, local psychologists who are trained in helping people get through traumatic experiences, to cope with trauma. In Gaza, we work with this fantastic organization, Mind Body Energy, it's called Mind Body Medicine, where they have these trained professionals who go and hold sessions to help people cope. We teach them breathing exercises, meditation that you can do in 5 seconds, breathing where you can get through traumatic experiences. Initially, we were training first responders in this psychological first aid because they aren't getting relieved. There aren't any other teams coming in and relieving them. And so they're day after day after day after day being exposed to horrific situations, including the safety of their own family or losing their own family members, losing their homes, losing extended family and friends left and right. It's so just the amount of grief and facing this incredible violence. So that was really successful, and we were able to find more people and train them in the trainings. And so people became trainers, and we were able to extend and expand that program to children, to people who also take care of displaced people, and people who run the camps, people who run the UN schools that are our shelters. So we would love to be there as long as possible. We'd love to even just expand our program for the rebuilding, because that's also going to be very difficult. Right. Again, once the bombs stop, it doesn't mean that the trauma stops. In Ukraine, right, we have psychologists that go and have sessions. I've attended a couple of the sessions where the children are making little clay models about how they feel, and it's just really incredible to see that. In Greece, we have a community center next to 2 refugee camps where we do the same thing. It's trauma-informed care. We have a women's space and a children's space. We have every activity is designed to help people cope with traumatic experiences. And refugee camps are not nice places to be. I'm sure they're not nice places to live. There's a lot of violence. There's a lot of tension. There's a lot of desperation. And so to be able to leave that situation in that context and go to somewhere that's so bright and joyful is absolutely needed. And that's one funny thing. When people go to our Greece program, they're like, everyone's just so happy. You kind of expect it to be this heavy experience, but it's not. Like, we want people to be happy there. So our team is really, we really want them to be okay. We make sure that they have activities. Our team itself have activities to stay healthy and happy so that they can really be there for people. And so that's definitely something we will always be committed to, is the psychological benefits of our work.
Yeah, very important.
Can really heal.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I wanted to ask you something you've touched on a couple of times, but this is something we continue to hear in our Leveraging Logistics for Ukraine conversations. It's something you live all the time. So with Ukraine and specifically, you know, the original was like, it's going to be a long couple of weeks or a month or something, and then the war will be over. Clearly, you know, that's not the case. Ukraine is still standing strong. But there also is a time with it. You also work in a lot of really difficult areas and on a really in difficult populations, also some war zones or refugee camps, things like that. People only have so much to give. As you said, some people are like, oh, is the war still going on? So there's an awareness issue. You're trying to fundraise for different causes, different programs, different people. What does that look like from your standpoint? How do you keep people focused on where the funding needs to go? Where, you know, how are you fundraising? How are you trying to juggle all of these different areas that you need support for?
Good questions. Yes. I would say my biggest goal as the CEO of a humanitarian organization is to remain present in places where there will be need for years, ongoing need. I think a good example was when last year I went to Uganda and we visited 4 refugee camps, and the refugee camps are quite isolated. Uganda's great. Uganda accepts a lot of refugees and does a pretty good job considering their circumstances. But they're quite isolated. You enter the camp and then you have to drive in these terrible roads that just get washed out all the time. But each entrance of the camp had these signs of all these organizations and projects, like this project sponsored by this org, and there's dozens of them, and they're all faded. They're all old. Some of them are 20 years old. And you go into the camp and you talk to people, and they're like, it's just people come and go. The services come and go. And so you get used to having a certain service, and then it's taken away, and it can feel so horrible for people who are absolutely desperate. They know they're dependent on aid and hate that. And then you'll have these organizations come and do this incredible work and help them become self-sufficient, and then they're gone because of lack of funding. I really don't want to be that kind of org that comes in, establishes these amazing programs. We're helping people become self-sufficient. We're helping them to get healthy mentally and physically, and then we're just gone. I think that does a lot of harm. And so my goal is, whenever we have an influx of funding, and that happened with Ukraine, for example, like people were just throwing money at organizations. We got quite a bit of, we got a big chunk of change from a couple of donors, and we were able to establish these programs in Ukraine. And they have done so much good. They have really brought these villages together, where like you have these community centers, you have youth councils, and women's sewing circles, and to establish something like that, I think is just a huge responsibility. So I'm always trying to remind donors that if you donate to a program, then it really should be something that's consistent. And that if you get really excited about one program and then you switch to another program or another org the next year, that you could be kind of putting an organization at risk of having to cut programs. So that's something that we're always trying to find donors that are like really committed to one cause for several years. I would say it's been a huge challenge. I think the political environment right now is not conducive to people focusing on one problem, right? There's just all these global emergencies popping up everywhere. And I think the human impulse to try to put out these fires is very strong and admirable and beautiful. And I just think the general public needs to know that there's a lot of people that still need help, and that the latest emergency is very important too, but to remember those that are still in need. And so when you have refugee camps that have been around for decades, they're still in need, right? Just as much need as an emerging crisis. So we're always searching for people who would like to be committed to one thing and stick to it. And that is a huge challenge. But yeah, I'm being quite frank here. And I do not want anyone to think that we're not grateful for the donations. We are so grateful for every single donation. We depend greatly on independent donors. We have a lot of small donors. We have a couple of big donors. We have a grant writer. A small percentage of our money comes from private foundations and grants. No federal funds. We're really glad that we didn't, because then talk about harm being done by suddenly cutting programs. Yeah. So like I'm in New York right now. Today's fundraiser is for Ukraine. Our board chair has been to Lviv a couple of times with us, and seeing it on the ground is just, it's amazing when you actually get to go and see the need. We just want to keep doing things like that. Just getting your, I love to travel around and talk to people and tell people about the organization. I'm always up for going out for a coffee or a meal and just blabbing like I'm doing right now, because it's really important. Right? Yeah. And I think people just, and you have to connect, and people don't know, right? So it's really helpful to have someone across the table that can just tell you what's going on, what I've seen and what I've heard, and the stories that I've collected while I've been gone. And I think that's really important, to be a witness. And
we will definitely put some links when we post this interview, so that a lot of people in our audience can contribute to all the efforts that you're leading, because they're all incredibly important. They're very impactful. They're helping a lot of people. And as you said, right, the media cycles are too quick these days. We forget that maybe the Ukraine war is still going. We forget that there's tons of other refugee camps, as you pointed out, that are still operating, and they need help, and they need our help, and they need our listeners' help. So we'll at least try to help you with the awareness side of things, because I think.
Thank you for saying that, and thank you for doing that. I think it's all a community effort, right? Yes, we're an organization. Yes, we have to run like a business. Yes, we have a hierarchy and a team and everything, but it really is a community effort. There's no way we could do any of this without our individual donors. $5 a month even.
Yeah.
People make a huge difference.
Anything
makes a
anything
difference.
you can,
Anything,
I think,
yeah.
helps a lot, and you add to the bigger pot. And so, Hayley, thank you so much. I was going to try to move on to something that's very characteristic of your organization, Lifting Hands International. It's your shipper tracker, right? Because we're talking now a little bit more about logistics. How do you get the product onto the right people, onto the right regions? And sometimes it's very, very hard to go into these countries, into these different regions of the world. And I think something that you do is this shipment tracker. Could you tell us a little bit more about what it is and what impact has it on maybe the donors, your organization, the people that you're helping?
Sure, yeah. Our shipment tracker is on our website. It just kind of shows what shipments we're collecting for and what's in them and how it's going to benefit people. I think LHI was initially our first mission was to send aid. And so that's something we do really well. We have learned that you have to have partner organizations on the receiving end who distribute the aid. So we don't just like send it and then just fly over and are the ones that distribute. That's impossible. So we spend a lot of time vetting organizations that can be the distributors on the ground, people who have experience taking aid to refugee camps and they know what people need, and so that you don't have random donations going to people that, when they don't actually need it. And so if there are a lot of school supplies on the shipment, then it means that we've had conversations with the distribution teams and their schools, and there's children who need these school packs and these school kits. Survival kits are going to Burundi because right now the camps are just so full of Congolese that there's no room in the tents, and so they have to sleep outside and they're getting bitten, malaria is spreading, right? You just have to make sure that we are in regular conversation with people on the other side. So we have identified over the years many partner orgs who specialize in shipping. One of our biggest partners is HHRD, Helping Hands for Relief and Development. They did our first shipment ever, and so we talk to them, they identify what's needed, we collect the aid, we pack it, and then we get it onto shipping containers. And then from there, they'll take it and they send hundreds of containers a year, And they love our shipments because they're organized and they're sorted and it's stuff that's actually needed. And then we also work with other shipping companies that will help us get our aid to where it's needed, help it process customs, and then our distribution teams are waiting on the other side with open arms and are immediately distributing the aid. And while I said that we're not flying over to all these destinations, I have been at distributions though. I have been in Jordan, for example, when they do get a shipment, and I just happen to be there doing our livestock program, and then I'm able to go with the team and distribute the aid myself and just see it with my own eyes, the huge impact it has. And like when the children just press the school kits to their chest, and each kit has a little card in English that says "You are loved," and so I think it has that extra connection of like, we have not forgotten you. That we see as our brothers and sisters in this world. We're all brothers and sisters in the end. So I'm really grateful for the shipping organizations and our partner organizations that help us get dozens. Over the years, we've sent dozens and dozens and dozens of shipping containers to refugee camps in far-flung places that maybe some of our volunteers haven't even heard of. We just sent one to Mauritania, for example, right? There's conflict and unrest there. Yeah. And half our volunteers were like, where? So it's a really wonderful opportunity to educate people when they're coming in and they're doing kits and they're putting stuff together. Maybe they're a corporate group just required to go for the day, and then they actually get immersed in this beautiful environment that our warehouse is, and they're able to learn a little bit about where their aid is going. And they know that by the end of this hour that they're there, they have learned enough to know that this stuff is going to get to where it's needed. And
Incredible. Thank you for your perspective and your candor today. It's, again, I've learned so much being in the logistics space around humanitarian aid, particularly what amazing, huge things very small teams do, and then also a little bit more what it looks like behind the scenes. But the vast majority of people are just sending in their donations and don't really have a good understanding of, peeking behind the curtain to see what goes on. You obviously started out of a need because there was certainly humanitarian aid being sent, but it wasn't being done well. We have heard horror stories of aid being, sent across the border and then just left by the wayside. So what would you like to see? You've been around a lot of countries, a lot of situations, a lot of people. How would you like to see the humanitarian aid industry in general? What would you like to see done differently, either process-wise or working together-wise, or what would you like to see?
Yeah, you definitely hit the nail on the head when you talked about working together-wise. The only way you can get effective work done is to work locally, work with local teams. And it, depending on where you go, sometimes the local teams are just little groups of people who want to help. And our responsibility is to make sure that the organizations we work with are solid and are getting the information and the monitoring and evaluation, the metrics. And so we spend a lot of time training our partner orgs too. We will have incredible teams. There's one team in Uganda where they live in the camp. They actually live there because the camp has been around for so long. Some of them were able to go get scholarships and go get trained. Our veterinarian got trained and then came back to the camp. And so the people in the camp have access to a veterinarian who just lives a couple of huts down. But a couple of those team members that are really in charge of going around, we had to say, like, we need this information. We need it once a month. We need you to actually talk to people. You need to figure this out and this out. How many of your kids are able to go back to school? Or the people that are selling the baby goats, how much money are they making? Like, we need to know this stuff, and they don't always know which questions to ask. And some of them need to be trained in spreadsheets. Some of our organizations don't have access to internet, and so we've been able to train them in how to, we get them a little internet module, and they're able to connect. In Ukraine, we have had a couple of I say that a couple of our teams have flown the coop, and that they were able to establish their own organizations and apply for grants, and that they're like financially independent now and can do. And so they're our partner org now, not just our teams.
Yeah. Oh.
I think that the vast majority of work is done by small organizations, and so I really encourage people to support kind of more grassroots organizations. They're able to get in there and be a little more nimble and meet needs immediately, and they're able to have these conversations with people. And we want to make sure that when we're talking to people on the ground, that we make sure that they know that we're listening to them, and that yes, there's always a power imbalance, but we don't want them to feel like they have to tell us what we want to hear, right? Yeah. So we make it clear, like, hey, what do you guys need? Like, we know that yes, you might need some clean water or whatever, but there might be other things we don't know about. And so that really is the future of humanitarian work. It should be based in research, and it also should just be very much a collaborative effort.
Fantastic.
Well said, and thank you once again. Ihor, as we wrap this up, I wanted to ask you, what does the phrase logistics with purpose mean to you?
Oh, I wasn't prepared for that question, but...
I know, well, that's what makes this question better, because it will be your first reaction.
Yeah, sure. So for me, it would be the same as, I guess, humanitarian work with purpose. So not just doing it for numbers, for statistics, for results, we're doing it for people, right? So doing logistics for people, it's, I guess, the best purpose that you can have in any field of business. So yeah, let's keep doing it with people in mind, and I believe we will be more than successful.
Fantastic. And Ihor, what are, you're there living it day to day, what are a couple of statistics or stories that really help empower you to keep going another day?
I'm always pretty often remembering how when you're going to really remote frontline settlements out in eastern Ukraine, and we're talking like really frontline settlements, 3 kilometers, 5 kilometers from active battle zone. Whenever you come there with some goods like food products or hygiene products or whatever, that was a part of logistics with purpose, right? All the way from, say, US to Ukraine. People really glad not just that you brought these items, they are glad just to see other people, like even people, whenever we come there, they say, we are so glad that we are not forgotten. So for them, sometimes it even might be more important that the most essential things like food, like keeping yourself clean and in at least somewhat decent conditions. Because I guess when you're living in basement for a year or year and a half, 2 years now, with some people without electricity, without water, without connection with outside world, you don't know if there's a world outside. You know, like those remnants from World War II, where some people were living for dozens of years on island, isolated. It actually happens right now in Ukraine. So whenever what keeps me motivated is just semantics. Basically, it's just about semantics. You know, whenever we're talking about humanitarian sector, we sometimes forget that there's a human in humanitarian, and I would just want people to remember about it a bit more often.
Yeah, I love that.
Thank
Collaboration
you so
and connection.
much. You both have been incredibly open and just authentic and inspiring. So we really appreciate you taking the time to have this conversation with us. Hayley, as we finish this interview, I mean, are there any kind of call of action for people that are listening to you right now? Anything that you would like to tell them?
Yeah, I think I would reiterate that a little bit of money, if you can spare a few bucks a month, can go a really long way. If a lot of people were to do that, then we would be able to keep our programs running for as long as it's needed. I think people feel a little bit powerless. I absolutely would if I were still a teacher and reading the news and I wouldn't know what to do. I would feel so useless. I think a lot of people feel like they have to go and help and like, oh, I can't, you know, if they have kids or jobs, like, oh, I can't do anything. But I think if people realize the power of just a few bucks, they would feel really empowered. It really makes a difference. It's not just throwing some money into the ether and just hoping it gets to where it's needed. There are some organizations that have a lot of bloat and maybe aren't doing the right kind of work, but you have to just put a little bit of time in, find the right organizations and keep supporting them. I would say that any organization really appreciates a general donation because then we have the flexibility. Like if there's something that happens, a huge emergency in another part of the world, we'll have some extra funding, or we have some funding that's not tied up. So yeah, at the end of the day, I would say after 10 years of doing this, that's definitely the way that normal day-to-day people can make a difference. In addition to helping in their own communities too.
Yeah.
Absolutely. No,
Yeah.
thank
Yeah.
you. Well said. And yes, main message, people need to make sure that they're not forgotten. I think that's very important, as Ihor was saying. And maybe us need to make sure that we don't forget either, and maybe just foregoing that one latte a week or whatever and donating it to organizations like yours might be a much, much better idea. So thank you once again. How can our listeners connect with you, Ihor, and how can our listeners connect with you, Hayley, and of course with Lifting Hands International? How can people go and donate directly to you?
Yeah, lhi.org is our website. We have a lot of information about our programs. We're launching a new website in a couple of months, but it's the one we have right now is still just fantastic. It's an amazing tool. You go and it's very clear. We've made it very clear where you can go and donate, and you can find our email address and contact us through there. I love hearing from people. I love hearing people's stories. I read every single email that comes through. I may not respond in a very timely manner, but I do definitely read every single thing that comes through.
Perfect. And Ihor?
lhi.org. I'm there on our team page, and my email is there. So please, if someone needs me, I am always open.
Well, wonderful. Thank you both so much. Again, appreciate your honesty, your candor. Ihor, thank you for joining us during a blackout. Sure. We just have no idea of what's going on. And I'm so glad Hayley is doing the great work she's doing, her team, that you guys have connected, and that clearly great things are being done. So we love working with you. As I mentioned at the beginning, I've been to your warehouse in the Salt Lake City area. It is very well organized. It is very well done, and our team just adores you, and we can't wait to work together more and do some more good. But for all the amazing projects that you're doing, we definitely encourage everyone to go on your website and look a little deeper and see if it's a cause that you're really willing to get involved in, and we certainly love it. And of course, to our audience, thank you for tuning in once again. Despite tariffs, despite current government shutdown, despite all the things, that there are still great things happening behind the scenes and even in front of the scenes in the logistics world. And we're happy to bring you these stories. So we will see you again in another 2 weeks. So thanks so much, everyone.